All right, hello pre-algebra students. Today we're going to cover section 1.6, where we talk about ordered pairs and relations. Our learning objectives today are to use ordered pairs to locate points on a coordinate plane, and we'll use tables and graphs to represent these relations. Our key terms, coordinate plane is the two-dimensional area formed by the intersection of two number lines, the x and y axis. Right, and if you have just a number line, right, typically you have 0, and then to the right you have your positive values, and to the left you have your negative values, right? We'll call this the x-axis. And we're going to add a second dimension up and down, right, that we'll call the y-axis. And going up, we have our positive values. And going down, we have our negative values. An ordered pair is a pair of numbers to use to locate any point on the coordinate plane. When you write an ordered pair, it's written with the x-coordinate first and then the y-coordinate in parentheses. That looks something like this. So the point 2, 4 would be a point on the coordinate plane where we'd go 2 over on the x, and we'd go 4 up on the y. That describes its location. Here's a little cleaner version of the coordinate plane, right? And you can see here we have labeled our x-axis, right, where our positive values are to the right of 0 and our negative values are to the left. And we have our y-axis going vertically, where we have our positive values going up and our negative values going down. The point 0, 0, which is the intersection of those two lines, that's called the origin. You can see that we have 4 what are called quadrants. Okay, 4 quadrants, quad meaning 4. So it's divided up into 4 sections here. In quadrant 1, where we would go right for our x and up for our y, our x values here are going to be positive and our y values are going to be positive, right? For example, 2, 1 is right here. And that's a positive 2 for x, positive 1 for y. That's how we would write that. In quadrant 2, we would go left on our x value and up on our y. So our x values here are going to be negative and our y values are going to be positive. For example, negative 3, 1, where our x is negative 3 and our y is positive 1, would get us into quadrant 2. In quadrant 3, you can see that we have to go left on the x and down on the y. So our values in quadrant 3, our x's would be negative and our y's would be negative. For example, the point here would be negative 1 for x and negative 1 for y. In quadrant 4, right, we would go to the right for x and we would go down for y. So in quadrant 4, the x values are positive, but the y values are negative. For example, this point here, my x value would be 1 and my y value would be negative 2. Now, we can also have points that end up on the x or the y-axis. For example, if I had a point on the x-axis, say this point here, my x value would be 3 because I go 3 to the right. I don't go up at all, so my y value would be 0. Can also have points that end up on the y-axis. For example, this point here, right? Notice I don't go over at all for x, so that's at 0, and my y value goes up to positive 3. So let's practice plotting some of these. All right, I'll go through and I'll plot these points for you, and then we're going to go to a site called That Quiz to practice ourselves. So point number 1, 0.24. So my x value is 2, and my y value is positive 4. So to the right, 2. Okay, so that's number 1. Number 2 here, 3, -1. So again, x value is positive 3, y value is -1. So there's the location of point 2. Point 3 is -1, so left for the x, up 0 for the y. So -1 here, up 0. There's point 3. Point 4, again, negative for x, positive for y. So point 4 will get me to right there. All right, I want you to pause and just see if you can locate these next 4 points or where you think they might be on the graph. All right, let's see how you did here. So 0.5 is -3 for x, -3 for y. So 0.5 should have been right here. -6 is this way for x, up 4. So there's 0.6. 0.7 is a +3 for x and a -2 for y. So there's 0.7. And 0.8, positive, positive, should get me in quadrant 1, right? X is 6, y is 1. There is 0.8. All right, I'm going to have you guys go to that quiz. And you're going to practice these. So if you type into a separate tab, thatquiz.org, this site should pop up. What I want you to do is I want you to click on points. And it should be 10 questions, tried on level 5, don't need a timer. And you want to make sure that the plot is checked here. So it'll give you a point to click on. So I can go point -2 for x, +2 for y. And I click it and it goes on to the next one. So -5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So -5, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have there. And if you look over here, it gives you right and wrong. Right, so it'll give you your right and wrong as you go. If you're getting some wrong, you can reset it. I'd like you to try that until you get 10 correct. Okay, so once you get 10 correct, okay, I want you to stay on that site, okay, after you plotted 10 correctly. You're going to change the setting. So instead of plotting them, you're going to identify or label the points. So if I come over here, I can go to identify. So it gives me the point here and I have to label it. So that x value is to the left 1. So that's going to be -1 for x. And it goes up 0. So my y value is going to be 0. So I plug those in. I can hit OK. And you can see here that it tells me that I'm right. Okay, and it gives me my next point to identify. Again, I'd like you to get 10 of those correct before moving on. All right, so you can pause the video again until you get both your points plotted and then your points identified, 10 each. Okay, so pause the video and do that. All right, a couple more terms that we're going to look at is domain and range. Okay, when we have sets of points that form a relation, all right, we have multiple coordinates, so multiple x values, multiple y values. Remember, our coordinate comes in the form of x and then y. And so when it asks for our domain and range, domain is just the set of x values, and the range is the set of y values. So for example, these are all my ordered pairs, all my coordinates. And again, I could plot all of these in a graph, right? I could do -3, 4, I could do -2, so 5, 6, 7, -2, 7, and I could plot all these in a graph. But the question here wants me to list the domain. So I just take all of the x values, -3, -2, 0, 2, and 8, right? And I put them inside these brackets, just listing them of in individual values, right? Those are my x coordinates. And then the range is simply the y's, right? 4, 7, -1, -4, -9. And I just list them under the range, right, in brackets, listing them singly. All right. Different ways to represent data and information, right? We have our ordered pairs here, and we can represent them in a table, right? And I can start with my x values here. We have -3, -2, 0, and 2. And then the corresponding, right? The -3, the y value with that is 4. My -2 has a y value of 3. The 0 has a y value of -1. And 2 has a y value of -4. So I could represent that data in a table. I could also graph and plot these points, right? So x -3, 4, -2, 3, 0 for x, -1 for y is right here. And we have 2, 1, 2, 3, 4 right here. So I could also represent that data on a graph. So multiple representations for the same set of data points. All right, your practice for today. In addition to thatquiz.org, that you did your 10 of each, identifying and labeling, I'd like you to do the following problems from section 1.6. And again, the thatquiz.org is going to give you the best practice for plotting and labeling. So go through and make sure you can get 10 correct each on that. And then on page 36, you're going to do numbers 18 to 23, number 31, and 32. Okay, there's going to be multiple directions for 31 and 32. I just want you to identify the domain and range for each one. So in number 30, just list the domain, right? Remember, that's x values, in the range, which is y values. And then the same for number 32. And we can get into some review problems here with 50 to 52, 54, 58, and 60. Don't forget about your BuzzMath assignments, and don't forget about your quick checks that are in Schoology. All right, hope everyone has a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.